Alrighty, we are back with you live once again on another Johnny Torch live broadcast. Welcome in here, our first broadcast in the merry month of October. Everybody got their Halloween decorations up by now? I should hope so. A couple of minutes late here. I'm fashionably late for a change. Usually I start these streams a little early because I'm so impatient, but I said let me take the time to watch the Birds of Prey trailer again, get it fresh in my memory, so that I can call upon it a little bit faster. I don't know. I probably could, I'm not going to be monetized as it is. I probably could show some of the trailer. I don't know, but I am going to just show some images of the trailer as usual. That's my way of doing it to hopefully not get copyright strikes. But before we get to that, here we are on the only way to spend your Saturday here with us for our 175th live broadcast. That has to count for something. That shows that I stick with it. I am not going to give up until I get it right. We're going to do live broadcasts here until we have a very strong following. So, first things first, we have to do the little bit of house cleaning here, the housekeeping. Please check out the link in the description below for The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon Private Eye, the grand comic book epic that yours truly has produced over the past, I don't know, I've written the character since I was 13, and, that's another thing about how I'm sticking with it. You know what I mean? I have faith in my abilities, and I just go with it and keep on doing it. It's a character that's been with me for most of my life, and so I really know what I'm doing. At least in my mind, I do. Well, I'd like to hear some readers and what they think about it. But check out the link in the description below for The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon Private Eye. You can check out the link in the description below as well for my Twitter page. Follow all the crazy shenanigans I get up to on Twitter. Some good, some not so good. That's kind of the way Twitter is, though. I don't know if anybody ever shows their best face on Twitter. It's kind of the place to sort of misbehave, I guess. I don't know. I mean, because I purposely don't try to misbehave on Twitter, but I think a lot of my controversial stances may come across more on Twitter. Although we got some more controversial topics here that we're going to get into that I'm sure others won't like. But yeah, check out The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon Private Eye. I'm working on the second remaster for the second two issues 2 and 3, that we're putting together into one big graphic novel form. I originally wanted these books to be released as graphic novels, but like I said previously, you have to keep the new material coming out. You have to keep it in the public view. I would love to just sit there and write 150 pages or whatever, and if I did that, it would take me probably 2 years to get a book out. But if I can keep it down to like 23 pages, something to that effect, I can get a book out every year, or no, about every 6 months, and a story, probably a story will come out every year. So going back through the catalog now, I'm trying to get the spelling errors. That's what bugs me the most, the spelling errors, because I just, I'm taking proofreading very seriously now. And also, checking out some of the, making sure some of the logistic things make sense, you know what I mean? Because, I did write these stories when I was 13 and 14. The first 2 issues was written when I was 13 and 14. So, for instance, the story revolves around Pencil Neck framing and blackmailing the police commissioner. And one of the scenes, the police commissioner says he doesn't even trust the Department of Justice. Well, of course, when I was 14, I thought that's what the Department of Justice did. They kept an eye on the police and corruption and stuff, when actually that's internal affairs. So, for instance, that's one of the things. I went back and I changed the line of dialogue from Department of Justice to Internal Affairs. And hey, don't blame me. We didn't have Google back when I was 14, so we couldn't check out those things as readily. A lot of stuff happened at the library back then. A lot of stuff you don't want to know. No. Okay, so let's get on with the show. Thank you for checking out Bullets Bourbon. If you have, much appreciated. And as always, I have the chat room open in case there are any stragglers who may come across the video while it is yet live, and I endeavor to answer any questions possible that I can. Alright, so should we start with the Birds of Prey? Since that's, like I said, fresh on my mind, maybe we'll start with Birds of Prey. Let's take a look at the trailer, some of the images I've got here. Alright, so, let's see. It starts off here where they reiterate that Harley is broken up with Mr. J. Did I mention also this is the 153rd, I believe? Let me take a look here. Yeah, 153rd Torch News Roundup. So that's what we're endeavoring to do today, is a Torch News Roundup. If you're new, Torch News Roundup is we take all the pop culture ongoings that interest me, at least, which usually is comic book television, comic book movies, and Star Wars, usually Star Trek, although I'm more of a TOS fan, so I really don't get into stuff like Discovery and this and that. But, also some, classic 80s properties that they're bringing back, like Ghostbusters, Bill and Ted, Cobra Kai. We'll talk about that if there's any news about that stuff. And, once in a while, it's good to just welcome in new viewers if you're checking this channel out for the first time. That's kind of what we do. Alright, now moving on to the Birds of Prey trailer. So, Harley Quinn breaking up with Mr. J, and what is the first thing she do? She cuts her hair. Isn't that always the way? Ladies, when you break up with a guy, you cut your hair. I don't understand it, but that seems to be the way. And it's no different here for Harley. And, I don't know. I kind of like her with the longer hair, but it really doesn't, really affect her look. She's still got sort of that, cotton candy color hair. Also, I want to point out, I'm proud of myself, I managed to get the crawl to cover all the images. It wasn't that hard to figure out, but, it took me about 4 weeks of using OBS to figure out how to get the crawl to be on top. That tells you how I'm a slow learner, I guess. But, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to get other folks on the show. I would probably invite a couple of guests and stuff on if I knew how to use that format, but I will be endeavoring to find out more when I have the time. Alright, so let's see. I'm not really taking these sequentially, these images, to be totally honest. Alright, this was the most interesting dialogue to me, where Harley is talking to Black Canary. This is their version of Black Canary, which is highly unrecognizable from the comic. And she says, Harlequin is basically a servant to a master, and without a master, they're not taken seriously. Interesting take on the Harlequin. I never really thought of that. It kind of reminds me of, like, Wolverine. He's a Ronin. He's a samurai without a master. And that's kind of what Harley sees herself as here. She's a Harlequin. She is sort of a sidekick without a master. And, that is interesting. I have to admit, I'm going to say right off the bat, the problems for me with this trailer is mostly, the cosmetic. Let's put it that way. I mean, I think they are doing right by Harley in most of this trailer. They really, and, Margot Robbie, I believe, is a producer, and so she's obviously going to safeguard this character. I think they've done largely right by Harley in this trailer. I think the problem is this did not need to be a Birds of Prey movie. They could have just stuck in one or two other female characters, but ultimately what happens here is they have completely, I don't want to fully say assassinated the other characters, but these other characters are basically unrecognizable. Excuse me. Unrecognizable to their comic book counterparts. And as I've always said, the comics are 50% visual. It's predominantly a visual medium. I mean, if you don't have a story, of course, if the writing's not good, the comic will suffer. But if you don't have the costumes, if you don't have, if you endeavor to race change characters and race bend characters, you're taking away 50% of what the reader expects and what they've come to know and love and appreciate about these characters and things. We don't have a comic-accurate Black Canary. We don't have a comic-accurate Huntress. Let's take a look at some of these. Let's see. This is Black Canary. Again, race changed. Doesn't dress at all like the Black Canary in action. They all look like they're basically wearing stuff off the rack. Huntress is not really any different. The only difference is I think they've given her a bare midriff sort of as, you know, sort of a sop to fans saying this is the Huntress, you know? I mean, honestly, Arrow's Huntress has this Huntress beat. And again, you know, they kind of butchified Huntress as well. I mean, Mary Elizabeth Winstead's a attractive woman, and they've kind of chosen to kind of go butch with her or something for some reason. I don't really get that either, but let me see. Let's go back to Harley for a minute here, and we'll see some of the more interesting scenes here with Harley. Here it seems she adopts a hyena, which is something I was hoping for. I'm guessing the hyena is completely CGI because we saw like some kind of stuffed animal type thing in the behind the scenes images. But yeah, this is actually an honest-to-goodness hyena. I think she usually has two. In the animated series, she had two, but I think, you know, they're probably trying to hedge their bets that it's going to be cheaper just to show one. And they're recreating, looks like the Lady and the Tramp scene there with, I think it's a Twizzler. So that's cute. You know, that's what I mean. That's very Harley. I think when they're showing Harley, it seems like she's doing stuff very Harley-esque. You know, it doesn't seem like they're character assassinating Harley, but it makes me wonder why we needed to throw all these other characters in here. Because, I mean, that's why I say Harley Quinn should be emancipated from the Birds of Prey. The Birds of Prey don't need to be in this movie. This should be just a simple Harley Quinn movie. Harley on Holiday, or they could have called it any number of 1,000 things. Could have had no tie to anything else. Maybe you could have kept, you know, Renee Montoya in it or something. But to bring in Black Canary, who is a strong character in her own right, and then basically completely have her look unrecognizable. Ditto Huntress. Ditto Cassandra Cain, although I was never a huge Cassandra Cain fan. Don't let me get started on that. Maybe we'll talk about that more later. Alright, so let's take a look at Black Mask. This is actually the best look that we have of Black Mask. He does look somewhat intimidating here. I should have got the scene where he was in his pajamas crying against the wall. And I think that's more of the Black Mask we're going to get in this movie. Roman Sinonis, I don't know how to pronounce that too well because, you know, I just seen it on the printed page. I've never really heard anybody say his real name. Roman Sinonis, I think is how it's pronounced, something like that, is the Black Mask, and he's a ruthless, you know, killer and Gotham City mobster. Here he is supposedly going to be flamboyantly gay and in some kind of relationship with Victor Zsasz, completely going against the grain of the character. But he doesn't wear his mask in any of these scenes. The thing that bugs me the most is when people tell me, well, this is sort of the beginning of Birds of Prey. This is the beginning of Black Mask. And he's going to wear the Black Mask at the end of the movie. And they'll probably get their comic-accurate costumes. But I say, you know, again, I don't want to use any vulgar language there. But buzz off. You know what I mean? It's like, if they're going to pull a Mark Hamill in The Force Awakens with these characters, you've wasted my time. Don't even bring them in. Just, like I said, again, I don't want to repeat myself, but it's unnecessary. Just give us a Harley Quinn movie and, you know, make the mob the villain. You don't really have to ruin Black Mask, a character that probably could fit very well in a good Batman movie, maybe a Nightwing movie, something else that they could be done with him, and he's being used here for laughs. He basically reminds me of, and I said this on Twitter, he reminds me of Tommy Lee Jones' Two-Face, which is where you took a character, you know, a villain that is known for his pathos, and you sort of, like, apply just a goofy Joker persona to him. You know, he's going to be jumping up and down, giggling and crying and this and that is not really doing the character any favors. It's not accurate to the character. Here's the aforementioned Victor Zsasz. Not quite as scarred up. Maybe, like I said, we'll probably see much more of the scars in the movie. He's not bald like usually Zsasz is, which, I don't know. I'm not going to complain about that because I think there's worse things that they can do with him than not have him bald. But in my mind, I think Gotham, if Gotham got anything right, they got Victor Zsasz right. I think they actually did better by Victor Zsasz than the comics did. I never liked Zsasz in the comics. I always said he's basically, you know, he's like, you know, for a suspense thriller movie, he's a generic killer. You know what I mean? He's not, he doesn't have the flamboyancy of the Joker. He doesn't have the, you know, charisma of the Riddler. He basically just kills people and scratches himself. And so I felt that, I can't remember the actor's name, I can't remember his name, but the guy from Gotham, he really embodied that character with some flair, with some panache, if you will, and made him someone interesting to watch and someone that I look forward to watching. I don't think that the comic version, which is like, I never seen the movie, but like 7 or something like that, where you just got a serial killer that, you know, is doing stuff. That's kind of beneath Batman. He should be able to dust him up in like 10 minutes and carry on having lunch before he goes out after Clayface or something, you know? So to have him have sort of the even D-level status, which I guess is what he has always been a mystery to me. I don't really know what people see in Zsasz, but anyway, there you go. Little sip of H2O. Alright, let's see, what else do we have here? Again, this was another scene I thought was pretty, you know, Harley-esque, where she's acting like, oh, this is like a slumber party, let's order pizza and something else. That seems very much like Harley, and I think that's kind of the genesis of this movie, is Margot Robbie wanted to show Harley interacting with other female characters. I think the questionable thing is making them the birds of prey, because she has a familiar history with Poison Ivy, and had they even made this Harley and Ivy movie, this might have worked a little bit better. I don't know. I mean, you know, I haven't seen the movie, but I think that's kind of more along the lines of what, you know, maybe fans were expecting. Although, like I said, I don't think you even need to have a co-star with Harley. I think she's a strong enough character to be able to, you know, carry a movie herself. At this point, anyway. And then we get some cute stuff here where she's doing the Marilyn Monroe impersonation. Really, really nice. She's singing along to some kind of opera track. I don't know exactly what that is. And not being up on my opera as I should be, I suppose. I'm guessing it's from Black Mask's Club. There's a lot of other images. I took like 15 minutes just getting these images up. But I mean, there is so many cuts to that trailer. You could show all kinds of stuff. But she looks like she's dancing at a pole at one point. She's also looks like she's tranked and hung upside down, which is something that Black Mask seems to do with his villains. I mean, his victims. I don't know if that's in the comics, because I've read like maybe 2 comics that had Black Mask in it. Like I said, he wasn't really a top level villain for Batman. He's more sort of C-list. And we see her like tied up in Black Mask's club. I don't know exactly what the situation is. Maybe she's trying to work at this club or something, or whatever it is. It has something to do with this club, and you know, she runs afoul of Black Mask. Let's see. This is where you see there's actually the guys are wearing black masks, the background dancers here. I don't know if she's even really singing that opera song. That's what they have as the background here. I'm thinking that's more sort of a trope of Black Mask. You know, how the villains always are like sitting back listening to opera and something. And I think she's probably really singing some other show tune here. You know, it could be Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, which is, you know, sort of a trademark with Marilyn Monroe, I guess. Or she could be singing Material Girl, which is what Madonna did when she was doing the Monroe tribute. So So yeah, that was cute. That was Harley-esque. Then we get the car scene here, which is... I love when she's got that wide-eyed, crazy look about her, because, you know, she's really inhabiting this role when she does that. It's like she has that... I don't know, I heard, what's her name? Grace Randolph reviewing this trailer, and she said something along the lines of, like she's trying too hard, or the accent isn't there, the Brooklyn accent or something. I disagree to an extent, but I think the problem is sometimes when Margot's doing the Harley voice, when she's supposed to be serious, it feels like she's kind of like tripping over it a little bit. I think that's what you hear in the early part there when she's supposed to be drunk, and that's kind of why I can excuse it, but she's kind of tripping over her explanation of what a Harlequin is. I think that's intentional in that scene because she was, you know, like I said, kind of half in the back. But, no, she really inhabits this character, and she really embodies this character. And like I said, you can see all the stuff that's going on behind the eyes. Whether she's, like, upset and crying in the first still I showed, or she's kind of, like, madcap crazy in this, you know, scene here. Or she really inhabits this character well. That's why it's such perfect casting. Not only visually does she look like Harley, but I think she really got the, you know, the persona down, which is also helpful. There's a joke here that I'm not sure I exactly get. I guess she's chastising Cassandra Cain about using the word chick, but then she uses all kinds of other terms like dame and broad and whatever. I don't know. I'm not quite sure I got the joke, or that the joke is actually funny, but it does seem, again, very Harley-esque, and she hands her the dynamite and she throws it at the car. You know, that's all stuff. There's also the scene with her shooting a guy with a beanbag, which I guess is supposedly to soften up a bit the idea that she's a killer, because I think in Suicide Squad they had this, I don't know, rap sheet or whatever, where she was like either implicated or convicted of killing like 5 or 6 people or something. I don't know. But I prefer to think that she's not a killer. I think that's what separates her from Mr. J. And again, later on in the trailer, she kind of talks about how she wants to be feared and not Mr. J, but that doesn't seem like her character. So that's what I mean. If they kind of push it into a direction where it doesn't feel genuine, I would have a problem with it. I would, you know, say they're not doing her justice, but they seem to be doing her justice as a character. It's all the other characters that they don't seem to be. And again, here's the final shot here. This is all the characters. And again, I've said this on Twitter. I challenge anyone. I don't care if you're a DC stan or you've read comics for 30 years or whatever. I challenge anyone to take a look at this picture, and apart from Harley Quinn, which is obvious, pick out what any of the other 4 characters are supposed to be. Who are they portraying, these actors? Huntress is unrecognizable. Don't even go there. Montoya, I mean, Rosie Perez, I think, is playing Montoya. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how you would get that either, because she doesn't look like a cop or a detective. She's basically got on, you know, overalls and a brass knuckle. I don't know. Black Canary, again, there is nothing there to resemble Black Canary. I mean, even the look, you know, the costume is non-existent. And Cassandra Cain, of course, being like 12 years old or whatever she is, doesn't seem to be, you know, she's obviously not the age to be Batgirl. I think they actually had a scene in the car where she's handcuffed to Harley, which is another weird thing. But there you have it, and this was kind of my reaction to the Harley Quinn Birds of Prey trailer. I don't know. I don't know. Even my most intense ardor for Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, I don't think persuades me to really want to see this film. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Maybe if I hear some reviews that are saying it's not that bad. I don't know. I'm thinking this is a wait for Blu-ray. That's exactly what I'm waiting. In a sense, you don't want to reward when they don't get it right. But on the other hand, they're kind of doing right by Harley, so that's why I kind of feel bad. Speaking of not doing right, we're going to talk some more about that very subject for the rest of the day. But, gee, wow, we spent half the show already, and we were just talking about the Birds of Prey. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you looking forward to Birds of Prey, the fantabulous emancipation of the one Harley Quinn? Or do you think, like I think, this is potentially a disaster, really, if what we've heard about it is true? It could very well be. But, yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. And we will definitely check that out for you. Alright, next up, let's see. We got some casting rumors here about... I gotta find it in my notes. Wait a second. Moon Knight. Moon Knight! Yeah, just don't say it like that, like I just did. Okay, according to a new report from GWW, which is Geeks Worldwide, Marvel Studios has an idea in mind about what they want from Moon Knight's lead. Apparently, they want an actor who is preferably of Israeli descent and a quote-unquote Jewish Zac Efron type. That's what they're looking for. Whether this means Efron is in the running is hard to say, but it's worth noting that he was reportedly being considered for a role in Eternals as Icarus before that ultimately went to Richard Madden. It's fair to say that most comic book fans probably aren't aware of Mark Spector's Jewish background, but he is the son of a rabbi and hasn't always been an unhinged, murderous vigilante. Now, this is interesting because, again, I've always liked the costume of Moon Knight. That's kind of the way I felt about Black Panther. When I was a kid, it was like, wow, that is an awesome costume. But I knew nothing about him. I just knew he was in Avengers, in the Avengers, and he would fight alongside Captain America and stuff. And that's the extent of my knowledge. Moon Knight, I know even less. I was told, I think, by someone that he was of Egyptian descent, which makes me question that he was Jewish and, son of a rabbi or something. That wasn't what I was aware of, at least what I was told from, I don't know, people trying to tell me about Moon Knight or something. But, yeah, that's interesting. Again, this is kind of like what I say about when you want diversity, you go to the diverse characters. I mean, Moonlight is probably, I don't know, maybe a D-lister, meaning that the normies don't know him. I mean, I've been in comics, all my life, and I barely know him. I've heard about him. I don't really know his whole story. So give some spotlight to these characters, these ethnic characters that are Jewish, that are, whatever, Hispanic or Asian or, whatever. Focus on them and give them a shot. That's fine. That's not the problem. The problem is when they want to race change characters, which we're going to get to that, as usual, again, momentarily. All right, but first off, let me know what you think about Moon Knight. Are you excited about the possibility of a Moon Knight? I think it's going to be a MCU series on Disney+. All right, we got the confirmation that Colton Hayes will be returning as Arsenal. I think he was also called Red Arrow at one point, wasn't he? Because that's the original. Is that the original name of Arsenal? Was Red Arrow? I think he went through all the names. I think he was Speedy, Red Arrow, Arsenal, something like that. In the comics, I'm talking about. All right, Entertainment Weekly confirmed. I already thought this was confirmed, to be honest with you. I said to myself when I was doing this, when I was putting the show together, I said, is this news? Did I cover this like 2 weeks ago? I know we talked about Willa Holland last week. I just took it for granted that he was already in, but they announced this week as if it is news, so I'll announce it. I always liked Colton Hayes. Colton Haynes as Arsenal. I thought he was a great sidekick. I thought he was a great addition to Arrow. Nice to know that he's coming back for the 8th and final season of Arrow in a recurring role. Last week, yeah, Willa Holland was confirmed to return. The stage is set for an epic reunion. Will they finally get their happily ever after? Hopefully. I would like to see them two kids get together. I was pulling for them. People ship all different things, but I thought they were a good couple. Alright, so also in the Crisis on Infinite Earths platter that we have here, we also have confirmation that Audrey Marie Anderson is going to suit up as a hero, I guess. I don't know much about this character either. Can I just say, I've always liked Audrey as Lila. I don't know if it was Lida or Lila. It's Lila, right? Yeah. I always liked her as that character, and I always kind of felt like they didn't know what to do with her because she's just the wife. You know what I mean? That's kind of what you hope the role of some of these characters would be. I mean, when it comes to Barry and Iris, I kind of just want her to be the wife. You know what I mean? I don't want her to be Team Flash leader. Same thing with Felicity. I mean, she has a little bit more of a hands-on role because she knows computers and alloys and compositions and other high-tech stuff. But, you know, you kind of want them just to take a back seat and let the hero do his thing. With Lila, they did that, and I kind of felt, well, gee, you know, we don't see her but for, like, 2 episodes a season. And I'm like, sure, there's a little more to her than that. Well, she's going to get the spotlight, I guess, somewhat here. Let me read the copy. It's been confirmed that Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event will see the longtime Arrow cast member make the transformation from Lila Michaels. Should it be Lila Diggle now? Aren't they married again? Yeah, they're married again. Into her superhero alter ego, Harbinger. Thanks to our friends over at Comic Book, we have a first look at her in costume. In a statement following the reveal, executive producer Mark Guggenheim teased her big role in the coming Crisis. Lila Michaels is Harbinger, a key component of the original Crisis on Infinite Earths that we were determined to honor in our crossover. What makes this particularly satisfying for us is that we introduced Lila Michaels and her Harbinger codename all the way back in Arrow Season 1. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't really know a lot about the Crisis on Infinite Earths thing. I mean, that's like Infinity War. I really had no idea about the comics, so it was good in a way that I didn't need to prejudge the MCU version, because I never read that particular arc. And I never read Crisis on Infinite Earths. Crisis on Infinite Earths, though, ticked me off because it killed so many heroes that I was, you know, attached to. I mean, I like Barry Allen as the Flash the best, you know. I liked the original Kara Zor-El as Supergirl. I didn't really want to see them killed off. And so when they killed off some of those characters, thinking, well, yeah, that's fine, I always had a problem with that with DC. DC was always doing things like that. They got rid of Hal Jordan. They turned Barbara Gordon into Oracle. Don't like it when they do that. I want to keep the original characters. I've said this many times. I don't really like mantle passings. And having somebody else wear the costume. I think, you know, you got to be your own character. Like, you know, Nightwing, I guess, is the prime example where, you know, he didn't just... You know, he didn't become the next Batman. He became a completely new thing. And you know, passing the mantle to, you know, Todd and Drake and all that, that was fine because it kind of became a role that Batman had a partner that would be that. But, you know, it's difficult for me to completely divorce the character from the costume. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't like it when they do that. All right, so let's move along here to our next bit of business. Let me know what you think about the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, shaping up to be a big one. And let's talk some more now about staying in the DCEU. There's some rumor going around about the future of Nightwing and Batgirl in the DCEU. Now, they both supposedly have solo films that were going to be released at some point. A new report from Forbes claims to shed some light on Matt Reeves' plans for the Batman. Apparently, the filmmaker is currently looking for actors to play Catwoman and Two-Face, not to mention the other role that Jonah Hill ultimately passes on, which is either the Riddler or the Penguin. That's kind of interesting, because I don't really understand why they don't just tell him that, you know, look, you're better for the Penguin, just that's the role we're giving you. I don't know why he's having this pick'em choice. I don't know. I don't get it. His plans for the Caped Crusader will reportedly span an entire trilogy, and there's even an option for it to extend beyond that. Clearly, Warner Brothers are hoping to make Batman the successful franchise it once was in the hands of Christopher Nolan, and introducing a lot of characters ensures that that's a rich world for the director to delve in. See, this is a good thing. I always wanted to have the Bat family explored. We've never gotten that. Christopher Nolan, to his credit, did a great job, but he chickened out. He did not want to touch Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl, and all of it. And I always felt that was a wasted opportunity, because people loved what he was doing with Batman, and to an extent I did. I kind of think he crapped up on the Dark Knight Rises, basically by giving it an ending. But that's the point now. If Matt Reeves will sort of do what Nolan was, hoping we were hoping he would do, which would be to just carry on and make a different Batman movie every 3 years with a different villain, and introduce all the side characters. That's a good plan. But again, I don't know from what we're hearing so far about the casting that this is going to be that good. We'll get to that in a second. The Batgirl movie we heard about a while back will reportedly tie into this version of The Dark Knight, and it's possible Barbara Gordon could be introduced in The Batman as a result. As for the long-delayed Nightwing film, Reeves is reportedly trying to decide whether to introduce Dick Grayson in his new Batman movies. Dick Grayson is expected to make an appearance in one of the Reeves movies, the report issues, probably in the form of an origin story. Whether that's the film's main plot or a subplot, however, remains to be seen. Now, that actually sounds really cool. I always wanted to see the Robin story told on the big screen. The problem with that is we already had that with Batman Forever, and films tend to... they don't want to get too close to the source material if it's already been done. And since we already seen the circus tragedy, I'm really afraid they're not going to do that for Dick in the... in the Batman or the Batman franchise, whatever this is going to ultimately be called. I don't want them to make up a new origin for Dick just because it's been done in Batman Forever. And again, talking about I personally think Batman Forever is the best of the 90s Bat flicks, counting Batman 89. Batman was the most in character then. They gave Dick Grayson a decent origin. It was good. And the problem is that they always fouled up the villains. They did probably the best with the Riddler. I mean, I think he kind of, it was a little over the top, obviously. But the Two-Face, again, was like I talked about earlier, kind of over the top. So the hope is that maybe they could do what it looked like they were trying to start doing with the Schumacher films, which is create the Bat world, bring in all the bad villains, and just hopefully this time make them more comic accurate. And, hopefully it'll be something worth seeing. Now, this is the more problematic aspect of it here. Let's talk about this, and you can hear me rant some more. Let me get the images up. There we go. Now, supposedly, the rumors going around suggesting that a POC, an actress of color, is being sought for the role of Selina Kyle, Catwoman, in Matt Reeves' The Batman. While appearing on Barstool Sports, my mom's basement podcast, Variety's Justin Kroll mentioned that women of color were being looked at for the part of Selina. He had heard some interesting names that could be in line to land the part. Lupita Nyong'o, Tessa Thompson, Gugu Matba-Raw, now I don't know if I'm saying that wrong, again, apologies if I am, Alexandra Shipp, of course, from X-Men Storm, and Logan Browning. They are said to be up in consideration to play Selina Kyle in the movie, which will see Robert Pattinson as Batman. I think El Mayambe, I don't know how you pronounce his name either, has discredited this, but supposedly that's the scuttlebutt. Nothing is confirmed regarding these names. So again, I don't know. I mean, do I have to launch into the rant? Now, last week we already got the news that what's his name there? Jeffrey Wright is going to play Commissioner Gordon, which is race-changing the character of James Gordon, vis-a-vis race-changing the character of Barbara Gordon. Now, I don't relish having to go on this rant every week. Again, it's happened so many times in the past that you should check out the video I did about a month or so back with Samuel L. Jackson on the front, or the one with the guy from Network with I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm so sick of having to talk about race-changing characters. Selina Kyle has been white traditionally in the comics since her inception in 1940, I believe. Could have even been 39 when Batman was created. I think it was 40, though. Same year as the Joker. And again, as this image that somebody has photoshopped, betrays, she would not be the first black Catwoman, whoever this black actress has chosen. We already had Eartha Kitt in the 60s, and we had Halle Berry in, early 2000s, portraying a black Catwoman. Now, the difference in Halle Berry's version is that she was not playing Selina Kyle. So I really didn't have a problem with that. I just didn't know why we needed a Catwoman movie that bear no resemblance to anything heretofore in the Batman universe. It kind of failed for me on that merit before I even saw the movie, which I honestly haven't seen the movie. I turned it on and saw like a couple of minutes of it, and it just looked so horrible that I didn't want to stick with it. But in Eartha Kitt's case, I think it was just, kind of stunt casting. I mean, Eartha Kitt was known for having the sexy purr, and it was like, oh, wow, let's get her in because Julie Newmar, I believe, it depends on what story you hear. Either she was, I don't know, either she was in another movie or she was, I forget if she was having her child at the time. I don't remember, but whatever the case was. Again, when you're going with 60s Batman, we also had John Astin take over for the Riddler, for Frank Gorshin. He had a mustache and looked nothing like Frank Gorshin. I mean, it's kind of like you don't take the 60s Batman as, making absolute sense. You know what I mean? I mean, hell, they had Cesar Romero paint over his mustache with the Joker makeup. So, I mean, we can't really say, well, this was a good idea because it was done before. It was really not a good idea then, and it really isn't a good idea now because the character of Selina Kyle. Although, in the Batman 60s show, they never mentioned any of their real names. I think the only real name they mentioned, believe it or not, and this is a trivia question for you, was Jervis Tetch. They actually used Jervis Tetch's real name when the Mad Hatter was, I think, in the first episode he was in. They gave a name to Mr. Freeze that wasn't Freeze. I think it was Dr. Shivel, something like that. I think which was a play on the words shiver because he was cold or whatever. But apart from that, no, you've never heard Oswald Cobblepot, you never heard Edward Nygma, you never heard Selina Kyle. So, again, I don't know. Is it possible that maybe Eartha Kitt's Catwoman wasn't supposed to be the same Catwoman as Julie Newmar's? I don't know. It's just nobody thought much about it back then. But again, this is the kind of thing that infuriates me because we really don't need to race change characters. Now, piggybacking off of this story, let's see. There's also a... Let me see if I can find it. Talk amongst yourselves for a minute. Alright, so, alright, here we go. There was an interview with Alexandra Daddario, which, again, I think I'm pronouncing her name right as well, where she did express some interest in playing Catwoman. Now, look at her. Now, she actually looks like Catwoman. I mean, if anything, maybe they darken her hair a little bit more and make it black, because we really haven't had a Catwoman that had the raven black hair. Although, I don't know. Did we? I don't know. Because, she's been played by so many actresses at this point, honestly. But she's got the eyes that's really going to make the costume pop, just like Michelle Pfeiffer. Physically speaking, obviously, she's not going to look ridiculous in that skin-tight costume. But let's get to the interview here. From Comic Book Movie, doing an interview with her, they asked, I'm sure you're aware that you're a fan favorite choice to play Catwoman in the new Batman movie. Is that a role you would be interested in, or are there other superhero characters you have in mind? Alexandra says, oh, I actually didn't know that. That's cool. Look, of course, I would love to join any cinematic universe. I think those roles are really, really cool. I think they do great things for people's careers, and it's always fun being in a big movie like that. I don't like to think too much about a role either before I have an audition or it's something that I'm working on. I don't like to get too invested in things I don't have. But of course, it would be silly of me to say, no, that's not something I want to do. I think that's really cool, and thank you to the fans for thinking of me. So, it does sound like something she would do, and like I said, she seems obviously... I think she's too obvious for the part. That's the problem. See, that's what we have with these diversity mongers, which is... We've got to fit in the diverse character. We've got to fit in the diverse character. I honestly think at some point they think, what would tick fans off the most? Because they're always going after these bigger names. I mean, you know, when it's like Commissioner Gordon, people are going to be like, that's ridiculous. They give me a good Batman, they give me a good Joker, or, you know, Riddler, or whatever it is, I'll move on. But that's, again, this is the point, though. When they start encroaching more and more on the beloved characters, Catwoman looks a certain way. Catwoman should not be played by anybody but a Caucasian female. Like I said, preferably with black hair and blue eyes, because that's kind of the look we have for Catwoman in the comics. Now, to get as close to that as possible should be by any writer, director, producers, you know, reckoning. That should be the goal. But that's not the way they're doing it. In woke Hollywood, we're going to try to put a POC in a prominent role, and of course it's got to be Catwoman, so we take away... I mean, how does Alexandria Daddario not, you know, even be on the short list for Catwoman? Or many of these other, you know, roles that, I mean, there's many other actresses, too, that look like they would be fine for Catwoman. My personal pick has always been, and I've said this before, Olivia Wilde. Now, I don't know if they're going to go with her because she's a few years older than Robert Pattinson. I think Daddario is probably about Patterson's age, 30, 31, something like that. So it's understandable that maybe they'll fit, you know, the role with somebody closer in age to Batman. But again, she's not even being considered. That's the sad thing. They're actively looking, because, you know, back 15 years ago, when this whole woke thing was, like, in its infancy, it was always, well, the best actor for the role is going to get that role because we don't look at race. And that was wrong then, too, because, you know, when you have a character, you want that actor to resemble the character. As I've said earlier on, even in this broadcast, that's half the appeal, that the character looks like they do in the comics and the actor is representing that character accurately. But there wasn't these, you know, actively looking for a POC for this role and this and that. It was like, well, we're going to try 3 or 4 people. You know, we got it open to, you know, whatever. And, you know, if a black actor does a good job with it, well, we'll see. Maybe we'd give them a role. And that's how you got some of those race-changed characters early on in like, the early 2000s. But now they're actively being woke, and they're actively saying, look, we're not even looking at Alexandra Daddario. We're not even putting her on the short list. Get her picture off of the table. We are outright looking for a person of color. And that's where I say they've gone too far. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's just as wrong as if you're going to cast Storm and you put Alexandria Daddario's name on the top of the list and say, we should take a look at her because she's going to play a great Storm. Everybody knows that is not the character. That's not the way the character looks, and I would be the first person to say, this is not going to fly. But again, they'd rather look at Alexandria Shipp for Catwoman than Alexandria Daddario, who looks more like Catwoman. It's just sad and indeed pathetic, if you ask me, that this is how woke, you know, society is. They're not even trying to appeal to the fans. They're not even trying to, you know, see who the fans would like. I mean, it's just pathetic. I mean, you know, I don't know. I've gone over this so many times. I honestly try to find a different angle that maybe I haven't said before that would try to get people to realize. I mean, you know, you're basically, you know, for lack of a better term, you're blackwashing a white character. You're not doing anybody any favors. You're not showing, you know, that there is, you know, any kind of justice in what you're doing. You're taking a white character and you're making it black. You are not advancing the cause of civilization or anything by doing this. You're just proving that you're not going to take the time to develop black characters that have already been created, and that you're not going to push them to the forefront. That's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with Moon Knight. Find the Static Shocks in the world and build up those characters. You know, with the X-Men coming out again, build up the black characters and the you know, the diverse characters. Build up Bishop, build up Storm. There is nothing wrong with that, and nobody would complain about that. I was talking about this on Twitter the other day too about Batwoman. Now, I'm probably going to do next week. I'm probably going to do. You know, I used to do the show where we talked about all the episodes, and while it was fun for me, it seemed like a lot of work that nobody really cared. So that kind of went off fast. But I'm going to give some thoughts about the Batwoman premiere next week. But it's the same thing there. I've said all along, you want diverse characters. Don't try to shoehorn in Supergirl has a gay sister. You know what I mean? Don't try to shoehorn in, well, Sarah is bi, but, you know, we basically only see her with women. You know, be true to the original concept. So when you have Batwoman, the original concept is that she's a lesbian. So obviously, that's what you want to back. You want to say this is where all the, you know, LGBTQ storylines belong, because it's indigenous to that. You know, that's where that kind of storyline is going to shine, instead of trying to sandwich it into. What does Supergirl ever have to do with, you know, lesbianism in the comics? Nothing. But we're going to force in lesbianism and transgenderism and this, that, and the other thing, just because wokeness. And that's why I say, give Batwoman those storylines. They'll fit in much better there. And that's not to say you can't have any cross-pollination with some of these characters, but that's kind of the point. You have to focus on where it fits. And again, race-changing characters, that is not helping out the cause of diversity. You're basically just saying, look, you're getting the sloppy seconds. We're going to take this character that was traditionally white, that people have, you know, loved and admired or whatever for over 50, 60, 70 years, and we're going to make them a different race just because we're woke and we need to have a checklist, boxes to check off that, you know, shows just how woke and concerned we are with social justice and so on and so forth. Let's table the rant for for today. We're coming up at the end of our show. We still got that one topic left to discuss. Let's see. Now, this happened last week, but I didn't have enough time because we had so much stuff going on. But Bob Iger had this book that he just did that came out. Let me see if I can find the copy. Here it is. Okay. So Bob Iger did his book, and basically he was saying how George Lucas felt betrayed by the Disney merger and how they treated him afterwards. So we'll look into that for the next couple of minutes here and just see what we think of it. Let's see. The extent of Lucas' disappointment in the direction of the Star Wars franchise under Disney has been revealed via Iger's memoir, The Ride of a Lifetime, Lessons Learned from 15 Years as CEO of the Walt Disney Company. In the book, Iger explains that Disney purchased Lucas outlines for 3 new movies when it made a deal to acquire Lucasfilm in 2012, although that purchase was, in part, made out of a sense of obligation. Excuse me. It suggested, we decided we needed to buy them, the chief exec writes of the decision made with studio head Alan Horn, though we made clear in the purchase agreement that we would not be contractually obligated to adhere to the plot lines he laid out. Now, this is very cagey, might I add, because Lucas, I feel bad blaming Lucas, but Lucas must have been very naive to think, look, I'll sell you the company, I'll sell you the scripts, make the scripts and I'll just overlook and see how yous are doing, and just come in my little flannel shirt and look over your shoulder and say, yeah, that looks cool. I don't know if I do that, and then leave. He had to know that they were going to take the ball and run in the most crazy, woke, and ridiculous direction possible. I can't believe he's that naive. Now, you know, I'm sure he's left of center. In fact, I know he's left of center, but, you know, I can't believe he thought that they were really going to respect any of his wishes and ideals or whatever. As it turned out, Disney and Lucasfilm didn't follow Lucas' lead for the new movies, a decision Lucas discovered when Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy, I still shudder when I say that name, and Force Awakens writer J.J. Abrams and Michael Arndt met to discuss the new trilogy, and specifically the 2015 installment. Quote, George immediately got upset as they began to describe the plot, and it dawned on him that we weren't using one of the stories he submitted during the negotiations. Iger writes, George knew we weren't contractually bound to anything, but he thought that our buying the story treatments was a tactic promise that we'd follow them, and he was disappointed that his story was being discarded. I'd been so careful since our first conversation not to mislead him in any way, and I didn't think I had now, but I could have handled it better. See, I think, like I said, it's a cagey move because I think they bought those storylines from him for two reasons. One, they wanted to make sure in case they veered too close to something Lucas had written, he wasn't going to say, hey, I wrote that down, and that's what my plan was going to be, and you owe me more money. And they didn't want that, obviously, so they're like, hey, we'll buy them, and if we get too close to something he already wrote, well, we'll just, you know, we'll have that insurance. The other thing is, I think they also didn't want him to be able to go and publish his own book, or, you know, it kind of would be hard to imagine him making his own movie or television series about the sequel trilogy, but they obviously wanted to take that off the table from him so that he wouldn't be able to just get out there and make his own version of Star Wars. I don't know if he would have had the license to do so, but he would have still had the story to do so, and, you know, better to be safe than sorry, I suppose. Let's see. George felt betrayed, and while this whole process would never have been easy for him, we'd gotten off to an unnecessarily rocky start. Okay. Things didn't improve when Lucas saw the finished movie. Following a private screening, Iger recalls Lucas didn't hide his disappointment. There's nothing new, he said, which is kind of what I complained about the first complaint I made when I first saw The Force Awakens. In each of the films in the original trilogy, it was important to him to present new worlds, new stories, new characters, and new technologies. In this one, he said there weren't enough visual or technical leaps forward. He wasn't wrong, but he also wasn't appreciating the pressure we were under to give ardent fans a film that felt quintessentially Star Wars. So again, this goes back to, you know, the red letter medium bums that, you know, lambasted Lucas and the prequel trilogy to the point where, you know, Disney were crapping themselves, worrying over, we don't want another prequel trilogy problem. Let's just remake the original trilogy. Let's just take the original trilogy and slap on a modern coat of paint and let's put it out there. Everybody will be happy. And they were kind of right to an extent. A lot of those babies that were crying about the prequel trilogy being not what they wanted, they got basically the safe pablum that The Force Awakens was. Anyway, let us move on. Let's see. The problem, Iger suggests, is that Lucas didn't fully appreciate what Lucasfilm and Disney were trying to do with the new trilogy, and specifically The Force Awakens. We'd intentionally created a world that was visually and tonally connected to the earlier films to not stray too far from what people loved and expected, Iger explains. And George was criticizing us for the very thing we were trying to do. Again, you could have been a little more ambitious, but then again, when you tried being more ambitious under Ryan Roundhead Johnson, look what ended up happening, so I don't really know what to do. And the old adage of damned if you do and damned if you don't is kind of what Disney is, their credo. Because they've tried it both ways. They tried to be too safe. People liked it, but it was shallow and superficial. They tried to play it edgy with Luke as this, grumpy old man, and we're not going to have an epic lightsaber battle, and we're going to kill off Snoke halfway through the movie. And people hated that as well, with how shallow and basically pretentious it was. In retrospect, Lucas' complaints mirror some of those from the vocal minority of Star Wars fandom upset about the direction the franchise has taken since Disney's purchase. While Iger strays away from agreeing with the criticism in the book, in promoting its release, he accepted that Disney's plan of releasing a new Star Wars movie every year might have hurt the property. I just think we might have put a little bit too much in the marketplace too fast, he told the New York Times in a profile published over the weekend, while adding, I think the storytelling capabilities of Lucasfilm are endless, because of the talent we have at the company, and the talent we have at the company is better than it's ever been, in part because of the influx of people from Fox. A rep for Lucas told The Hollywood Reporter that the Star Wars creator had no comment on Iger's book. Supposedly, I don't think it's in the Hollywood Reporter article, but I did read also in an article that they did not sign him to a gag order or whatever it was where he couldn't complain. So that's where you got the initially him getting out of his system, George Lucas, with what's that guy's name? Charlie Rose. He initially voiced his displeasure when The Force Awakens came out with a very mild, he was even-tempered. He didn't really he didn't go too far. But he's been very quiet since then. He's kept mum about the state of Star Wars. I would love for him to actually just come out and, I don't know, write a book. I don't know, maybe an interview, a more in-depth interview with someone like Rose. Would be interesting. So there is the betrayal of George Lucas. Again, I can't believe he's so naive not to have thought that it wasn't going to quite go his way. When you're dealing with a company, it's not really anybody's best interest to not have the creator involved when you're doing things like this. But, that's the way it goes. He was betrayed 10 years ago by the Dark Lord. to quote Count Dooku in Attack of the Clones. So, there you have it. Another episode, another stunning episode. Ooh, speaking of stunning, I didn't do that purposely, by the way. Another stunning episode of the Torch News Roundup, number 153. And Torch News Roundup 175. Just want to mention once again, please hit that like button. Share the video whenever possible to as many people as possible. We're trying to get to 100 subs, so please sub if you have not already. We're up to 96 now. It took us how many years to get to 96? It took us 4 years to get 96 subs. Let us get at least the last 4 subs by the end of the year, please. And check out The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon Private Eye in the link in the description below. I keep saying I'm going to update the sample pages. I haven't gotten to it yet. But we've got some sample pages up. See what you think about the story. The remaster, it's hard to explain because it's the third story in the franchise, but it's our first remaster, is out there for purchase, and I'm very proud of it. It's called When the Night Comes, as we bid farewell to the lovely Alexandra. Let's take a look at the cover. There is the cover there. And very proud of this book. I just love the story, and it's one of my favorites, and I'm just so proud of it. The second issue we're working on, the second remaster, is probably due to be out at the end of the year. I'm proofreading it now, which is, it's hell, it's torture, it's terrible endurance. But that's another great story, the introduction of Pencil Neck. So check it out. Check it out in the link in the description below, the website, and you'll find some sample pages, see what you think. Also, check us out on Twitter for some shenanigans and chicanery that only I myself can provide. Thank you for joining us once again on the only way to spend your Saturday here with us on the Johnny Torch program. This is Johnny Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.